And so we talked about, and here's what I wanted to cover with you with Dr. Chris is one of the common questions I get is when you do the marketing, um, how do you market to your existing attorneys or who do you start with? Let me share with you who you start with and a common problem you're going to have and how to overcome it. And this happened with Dr. Chris. So hang with me here, Dr. Chris, and I'd like for you to share your experience in just a second, okay? But you always want to start with your trusted source first. In any marketing, you always start where there's the highest trust, even if you've only worked with an attorney one time, okay? So that's one list. Remember, there's several lists you should have. That's one of them. Now, that's where you want to start because there's an easier door in. Chances are they're more willing to talk to you, have lunch with you, all those kind of things. Okay. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. The bad news is they already know your documentation is probably bad. And so a lot of times I get questions from my doctors. They go, well, how do I handle my existing attorneys that already know, my existing documentation? And then I come in and say, I've got this other great documentation. Well, they don't really believe me, or it's hard to get their attention, or et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's why. And a great example is like it's the law of familiarity. In other words, the more familiar you are, the more comfortable you are with somebody, a lot of times you'll give them less authority. That's what happens. You start to see the mistakes they make, they're human, things like that. And maybe you've done this before, somebody you put on a pedestal and then you get to meet them and you go, oh, they never go up. That's a fact. They always come down. You start to see the human components of it. So here's what happens. It's the law of familiarity. It's just like if your mother or father is not going to treat you like they would any other doctor. My mom didn't treat me like a doctor. She still took, her doctor's advice over, injury, over categories that the chiropractor is obviously way more authoritative in. Okay, so hopefully we can all understand that. That's the bad news. Okay, good news. And so how do you handle that? Well, a great example is you have to do what's called a third party, a high authority third party. What does that mean? It means that it can't be you. They already know you. So, you come in with a bigger, like you know everything and they already know you don't, then that's what happens is they just take you for granted and it's no big deal and they don't see anything, they don't put any more emphasis on it than what they should. So how you overcome that is you do what's called high authority third party. A really good example I use with Dr. Chris is, let's say Dr. Chris's mom really liked Dr. Oz, just thought watched him every day. He was the authority, okay? And then what happens is from the documentation is if Dr. Oz was, what happens is Dr. Chris wants to say, I'm using Dr. Oz's strategy or technique. That's what you want to say. See, because Chris's mom, who he's trying to influence, already trusts and has authority in Dr. Oz. So if Chris would come in and say, hey, I'm using XYZ of Dr. Oz for XYZ, now Chris's mom would pay a lot more attention to Chris because he's using Dr. Oz's strategy. See, that's how it works. So you got to pay attention to that. It's real. Your brother and sister is not going to treat you like a doctor. Your mother, father is not going to treat you. Well, same with your existing attorneys. So what you do with your existing attorney, you always go with them first, but what you do is you use higher third-party trust. What is that? You use me. What you do is you get them, you let them know that you've hired a consultant, and you just have to say like 3 major bullet points. You've hired the #1 consultant, personal injury consultant in the United States. He's opened 77 offices in 20 states. He's never lost a case in court, and he's written 10 books on the subject, and he's a speaker in 3 chiropractic colleges. See, those are high authority statements. And you want to at least make 3. And then what you want to say is you're using his documentation. That's what you want to say. That's what's going to get their attention. Way more than you just coming in saying, hey, I got better stuff. Okay. So the 3 bullet points I'd say is I'm using Dr. Paul. He's the #1 authority in personal injury in the United States. His documentation has never lost a case in court, which is true. I've never lost a case in court when testifying on behalf of my patient. I've opened 77 offices in 20 states, and Beaker and 3 chiropractic colleges. So if you just use those 3 authority statements, you'll be fine. And that's the documentation. And you've hired me. So you've hired me as the consultant to use that authoritative system or to help support and increase your documentation. See, that way it still doesn't make you look bad, but it overcomes that law of familiarity issue. So make sure you do that. Now, this is what happened with Dr. Chris. So let me unmute Dr. Chris and let's do this. Dr. Chris, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Doc.
Okay. So you didn't do this at first. You called me, so you didn't learn the marketing, and you did the common mistake everybody does. You ran out and you took little pieces of the information we taught, and you were excited about it, right?
Right.
And you started trying to tell your attorneys about it, right?
Right.
You didn't set up a presentation. You didn't go through the chronological order. You didn't do a sales presentation because we didn't teach you that yet, right?
Right.
Okay, so you did all the common mistakes. You get excited. You learn a few different things, a couple additional components of documentation that'll help the attorney, and you run over there and you try to tell them about it, right?
Right.
And what kind of response did you get?
It turned into a debate, an argument.
Right. Why did it turn into an argument?
The defenses got up.
You were trying to tell them something. You were trying to tell them something that they were in a state of unconscious incompetence, right?
Right.
In other words, you were trying to tell them some things about documenting a disc injury, if I believe that's what it was, right?
Something along those lines. Yep.
Okay, something along those lines. And they were in a state of unconscious incompetence. Now, if you have to remember, that's where they're at. If they were in a state of conscious incompetence and knew of all these things that were not being documented, and they knew that you could document it, they'd be seeking you out instead of you seeking them out, right?
Right.
So you have to be aware, first of all, that they don't know what they don't know, and that's where they're coming from. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you can come and just shove it down their face. You found that out the hard way, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
You didn't stair step anything, did you?
No, I did.
You just came at them, with something different, and you got a big defensive reaction, didn't you?
I did.
And that's exactly what happens when you don't know marketing or sales. All right. So Dr. Chris called me and told me what happened. I go, oh my God, Chris, that's not, and I explained all the reasons why that doesn't work. And then I explained what he needed to do, which was do the third party. And did you get a chance to do the third party trust yet with them?
Yeah, I just went back the next week, pretending like nothing happened, and everybody signed up. The whole firm signed up.
Okay. And do you remember what you told them?
Yeah, I just said I'm working with Dr. Paul, 77 office. He started 77 offices in 20 states, and I just went right into here's the
Wait, stop right there. Hold just a second. So you did the high third party, which is exactly what you should have did. Then you went into the topics, what are called primary pain-based topics, the highest motivator topics, right?
Yes.
Those were the topics of those short videos we made, right?
Right.
And then you started saying the pain-based topics, and what did they say? What did they do?
Oh, they said thank you. They said, and then I said, then I mentioned the presentation, and they said, well, sign us all up.
Okay. Little bit of a different reaction, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know if they had a chance to watch any one of those short little videos yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. And of course, we do a marketing campaign. In other words, we have to stair step this. You can't just do a 180 degrees paradigm shift to somebody who's in a state of unconscious competence. Nothing works that way. Okay. And of course, you found out the hard way and then you corrected it. And now, did you just tell me they all signed up for the presentation?
Yes, they did.
There you go. There's your marketing campaign. They all signed up for the presentation. And then what am I going to do in the what are we going to do in the presentation? We're going to stair step them. We're going to go one little step at a time. We're going to slowly shift their awareness to take it from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. We're going to show them the potential pleasure. More importantly, we're going to show them the high pain that it's causing and what's going to be and the result of what's causing their low ball offers, their unfair, bad faith low ball offers. And by the time we'll stair step, and then we're going to third party it. We're not going to blame them because that'll create a defensive reaction also. So, and by the way, it's not their fault. It's the doctors they're using with bad documentation fault, and that's the truth. So we do third party blame to decrease the defensive reaction, allows them to come through. So we not only have shifted their mindset from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, now they're highly motivated. And the only person, and then from there, we eliminate the obstacles, and then we add in the service factors. And that's why immediately we start getting 2 referrals immediately from that meeting. The whole referral process starts from that meeting. That's the stair stepping effect. So we have a target market. We do a stair step marketing campaign. All we're trying to do is increase their awareness and interest, not trying to create a defensive reaction, to get to the presentation. And then the presentation slowly takes them through psychologically what they didn't, or what they were not even aware of, and how much of a problem it's causing. And you point out not only all that, but you're pointing out the solution. And therefore you immediately become the go-to guy. We point out, and then we match that with how much money they're losing. And nobody wants to lose that kind of money. The average attorney seeing only 2 clients a month loses over $200,000 a year, and they're not even aware of it. And then from there, we minimize the obstacles, and then we handle the service factors. And that's immediately when we start getting the referrals. And usually by the time we do the first financial driver evaluation with the documentation, about 50% of the time, the attorney asks you to evaluate all their other cases and be the expert witness for their other cases. That's what happens. That's how you do the presentation. So you're real close. You've got, how many people have you got signed up for the presentation right now, Dr. Chris?
I have 7 signed up for the presentation.
So Dr. Chris hasn't done this presentation at all. I'm actually going to do the first one for him. So I'm actually going to do his sales presentation and start his attorney referrals. There's a good chance, Chris, you will not even need to get any more attorneys. 7 attorneys, depending on how many cases they get a month. Do you know how many soft tissue indications they get a month? By chance.
They average some between 2 and 5.
So if you got 7 and say the average is 3, 3 times 7 is 21. 21, let's do a little bit of math here, Dr. Chris. 21 a month. What's your case average, Dr. Chris? $2,000, $3,000, $4,000?
About 3,000.
Times $3,000 times 50 times 12 months in a year. That's $756,000, Dr. Chris. You are on the very edge of increasing your business $700,000. Do you realize this? Dr. Chris, do you realize this?
Yes, I do.
This is why you need to do it right. Now look at the difference it's going to make, $700,000 versus you not knowing how to do marketing, not knowing how to do sales, and just piecemealing it, and then running over there and shoving it down their face. And what kind of reaction did you get when you did that?
Not a good one.
You got a standoff. You got a defensive reaction standoff, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So can you see how when you do things right, not only you understand and know the documentation, but you understand marketing and basic sales, you understand how that can significantly increase your income fast. We're talking about one presentation has the potential to increase your business $700,000 a year, Chris. Do you know of anything else that can do that?
No, I know of nothing.
And that's exactly what we do. This is exactly how we increase doctors' businesses, $250,000, $500,000, $7 million a year. And it happens pretty fast. This does not take a lot of attorneys. I say it all the time. This is not a volume game. You could literally do 7 attorneys, never get any other attorney's referral. Of course, that won't happen. You'll go out and get more after this happens. And there's no doubt in my mind, within 1 year from now, Chris, you're going to increase your business $1 million. You get, if that's 7 is 700,000, you get another 3, 4, 5, you get 10 to 15. You're at only referring 2 cases a month. You just increased your business over $1 million, did you not?
Yes, I did.
That's exactly how it happens. This is exactly how it works. This is the difference between ignorance. And by the way, prior to starting me with the documentation, what percentage of documentation after you've learned it, what percentage of the documentation do you now look back and that you thought you knew, but now you realize you did? How much do you not know now that you thought you did? What percent would you say?
Back then, I probably only knew it was less than half the documentation, less than half.
That time you thought you knew most of it, didn't you?
I did.
And now when you actually learned it, you say what? It's only about 50% is what you actually knew.
Yep.
That's the difference it makes. So first we learn the documentation, then you're learning the marketing sales process, and that's how it's going to change your life. Any comments about that? Is that not pretty much what happened? So all you have to be able to do is when I do the sales presentation and hand them off to you, you just have to not fumble the ball. You actually have to do the things we say we're going to do with our documentation. And by the way, the number one thing I say all the time, you can't control what the patient does or doesn't have. That is not where your focus needs to be. But what you do control that has the most influence is you know all the categories of documentation, and you know how to put it together, and you know how to convert it to an injury award. And just as importantly, you know all the categories that are needed for the different injury awards. And if they don't have them, you will have the ability to tell them exactly what they do or don't have relative to the documentation and the injury award. That is the single most important. Not that patient, that the first patient they referred over to you, you try to create a large injury award from. I say it all the time. What's most important is you know all the categories of the documentation, even if the majority of the categories were negative. That you know how to document them all, and you know how to put them into, the most important categories that are relevant to the injury award, and then you know how to convert that injury award into money. That is what is important. That's why it doesn't matter when they refer you a case what that patient does or does not have. Does that make sense, Dr. Chris?
Yes, it does.
That's the importance. So we're not trying to hit a grand slam with the first injury award they refer us. What we're trying to do is get them to see we're the authority, even if that case is lacking the positive findings. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yes, it does.
All right.